Good day, everyone. So today we have Cam back in the house,
We're
and we'll
back.
be dissecting the chart of Justin Bieber, a key person of interest, I would say, because his life is very much intertwined with the previous podcast person of interest that we did, which is the Sean Combs or
Yes.
the Diddler, his nickname. So welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is gonna be fun. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I think we did last video. When was it? 2 months ago already?
No, a month ago.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Oh, so sorry. A month ago. So we wanted to do this, I guess the continuation of it, just because it's all, I mean, there's so many other people involved that we might, consider doing in the future as well, because it's not just the one person. So we just wanted to have a look at this, and this particular chart, I guess wanted to be very, number one, respectful and conscious of the fact that we will be discussing themes, as well as the previous video, of abuse of all types you guys can imagine, and child abuse. So if you're not comfortable with that, please skip, skip. It's okay. We won't take,
Yes, trigger warning. Yeah,
but please do
TW.
not, yeah, which we don't want to trigger anyone. So please, yeah, be aware that we will be discussing those themes. They're a little,
Yes. So just as an outline to this continuation podcast, so to speak, we will be starting with while revisiting Justin Bieber's past, some interesting facets of his natal chart
yeah,
that basically suggest or it signifies some very important facets of stuff that we know of him from the news, from the media. And after that, we will be going to his present, but more importantly, his future, the near future, what actually is in store for him. And we will finish this podcast with not one, but two charts that describes the relationship between him and the Diddler, or Sean Combs, in other words, and what's in store for them. Will one actually fall because of the other, so on and so forth?
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And the reason why we want to do his past, basically his natal, is because we want for you guys to have an understanding of the foundation. And we always like to approach these videos to, you guys can learn from it as well. So we will be showing some indicators in the natal chart that could indicate possible abuse. Please do not take this to heart, because every single chart is different. So just because you have one of these aspects or positions, planetary positions, means that you know what I mean. So please just be mindful of that. Okay.
Oh, I think it's the good point of telling the audience that just because you have a certain configuration doesn't mean you're screwed, or it doesn't mean that it only manifests in one single way, because things are very multifaceted.
Yes. One position could mean, 100 different things. So it all depends
Yes.
on the whole context of each person's chart. So don't take it personal if you happen to have one of these or one or two of these.
Mm. And yeah, let's visit his past, shall we?
Oh,
And this
are
is
you
his.
going to share?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Now,
So I
can you?
will have the annotation on in case we want to highlight some stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
So just one more thing, guys. I guess if you have previously seen our videos, you can already tell that I do whole sign. I practice traditional astrology. I do take into consideration Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, though. But Donnie does Placidus. So we're gonna,
I switch between both.
yes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go back and forward between the two house systems. Okay. So please, just in case you guys get confused.
Yeah. So in this case, with Justin Bieber's chart, Scorpio at 29 degrees is his ascendant. So we're going to switch, like, for example, Jupiter is in his Placidus 12th, but in whole signs is in his first. so on and so forth. We will just kind of point that out as we go along.
Yes, exactly. So hopefully it
So
doesn't
do you
get.
want to,
I
I
hope
think,
not.
well, for people who really want to get into the nitty-gritty of astrological interpretation,
Yeah.
I guess it's a learning curve for them.
Yes.
It took us quite a while actually to actually get there, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's why but we'll try to make it as easy as possible. Yeah, so did you want to start or do you want me to?
Yes, I'm actually thinking that you may want to start with his ascendant.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on in his ascendant. So for me, of course, the Scorpio is the first house. So Jupiter, Nessus, North Node, Pluto, and the ascendant at 29 degrees are all in that first house. And this can already, the ascendant at 29 degrees, is already a very karmic position for the ascendant to be, especially in Scorpio, conjuncting Pluto, conjuncting North Node. You know what I mean? This combination is extremely karmic. So it can talk about past life issues. It can talk about generational themes and issues, bringing to this life. It's interesting because the ruler, which is his Mars, it's in the fourth house whole sign right here, and applying to Saturn. Saturn is in the fifth house, Pisces, right? So we're talking about Mars moving into, applying to that Saturn in that fifth house. And this, just by looking at it, the ruler of the chart is a very important planet to analyze, but just by that, you can already see tension in the family, for example, just as easy as that, issues of control, issues of perhaps wounding the inner child of the native fifth house, right? Something happened in his childhood that deeply wounded him and maybe took away that inner child's safety that we all need. You add to this the fact that the moon is in a square, in a perfect square to Uranus and Neptune, and we can see a very, I guess you could say, unconventional childhood, very perhaps disruptive, very up and down. Something happened in his childhood that really removed the sense of safety that all children need. This could also, of course, relate to the mother, and the mother having some allegedly, and please do not, but the moon in a square with Uranus and Neptune sometimes can show either the native or the mother having some sort of emotional issues.
Emotional fractures or some kind of
Yeah,
psychological or
psychological,
psychiatric. Yeah.
especially with that moon in the 12th house. And this could be generational, as in like he inherited this from his mother's lineage. So this is why maybe today we can see, or we have seen, a Justin Bieber that has struggled with addictions, for example, that has struggled with not just, I think it was alcohol and drugs, of course. Very spiritual person. I have to give that to him. Very spiritual. I think he has a lot of either a very well set belief system, he could practice spirituality as well. But all in all, these two, the moon squaring Neptune and Uranus and Mars applying to Saturn, those two things are already indicators that his childhood, at the very least, was safe, was disruptive in some way. The parents may have divorced at a very early age, which might have affected him psychologically, even though maybe he probably doesn't even remember. But
I think that's why he, wanting to escape this kind of fractured or chaotic family background, exemplified by his moon squaring Uranus and Neptune, and using this energy in a more positive manner, this can actually make him become a musical savant, because Uranus is the genius and Neptune is transcending, but it's also musical and artful as well, very aesthetically based. He started off singing covers that's exemplified by that moon in Libra. You know, whatever external influence that he has, he's always playing music, basking.
Yeah.
And that's how he found his start. And with that moon squaring Uranus and Neptune, he did upload his performance videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that's how he got founded and gained popularity. So that square is not just, you know, describing a set amount of family related circumstances, but also can also suggest how he can, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's what you meant before about, you know, like an aspect meaning so many different things, you know, you can see it from so many different points of view. So, and this one is, nothing is inherently bad, you know? So
And he's very much like keeping up with the beat of the music. There's that Uranus and Neptune conjunction in a very regimented sign of Capricorn. So it's very rhythmic, but it's also very much like,
he would be very good at like just
catching the rhythm,
improvising, you know, improvising either songs or beats, or you know, that he'd be really
well, except when he's drunk. And this square from the moon to Uranus and Neptune is also someone who's very empathetic and very sympathetic, and also very humanitarian. There's a side to him that's very much that, and is geared towards children, probably because of his lost childhood.
Yeah. Well, the problem with this is that it's a square, so it could be a source of conflict for him, you know. The empathy, the compassion could actually play against him. Sometimes when we feel others' energies so much, we are the ones that absorb all of that, and then we, you know, moon in the 12th house, right? So that would be for him the challenge to overcome that.
He probably is very good at picking up the background frequencies and vibrations of a certain situation he's being put into. But however, with that square to Uranus and Neptune, it's not a trine, it's a square.
The square, yeah.
There is this, I will go on and say this, exploitative and manipulative energy with people around him, that in particular, he's entered into some kind of relationship or contractual obligation, Libra.
Which is the same theme of that Mars applying to Saturn, right? It's in that 4th and 5th house, being exploited in some way by an external person, force, circumstance, whatever you want to call it, trying to assert control over him. The 5th house is also the house of art, the house of creativity.
With that white conjunction that's in 2 different signs between Mars and Saturn, when I see a Mars and Saturn conjunction, there is always this energy of being emasculated. That, you know, that's why he's got that swoop hair. His appearance is always a bit more feminine. He kind of like suppresses the masculine, you know. He's always been that pretty boy archetype in pop. And very interesting, the signs of Aquarius and Pisces are being involved here in this white conjunction, because Pisces is about the music industry. It's about the artful industry. Anything that's artistic and musical in nature. But then you've got Mars and the sign of Aquarius, which can be, this can be introducing this level of like deviancy, particularly in the males that he meets, Mars.
Yes.
So this white conjunction between Mars and Saturn is really telling me that there's really this potential to be exploited or manipulated or deceived by certain males in the music industry.
In saying that as well, you could turn that around as well, right? So
you can turn that around. Yeah.
He could be also become the one doing these things.
And then that
doing it, just saying that he does also have the potential to become that too.
Right, and then that emasculating combination of Mars in orb to conjunct Saturn, the next planet that's right beside Saturn will be the Sun. And that's why it kind of, that became his image that propelled him to stardom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the songs that he sing, is very much that very teeny boppy boy
Yeah.
with
I
the
know.
side swoop hair. Yeah. And now let's delve into something that is probably a bit more uncomfortable to talk about. So Cam, can you perhaps clear your arrows so I can just input mine?
There you
Yeah.
go.
Okay, cool. So let us talk about his ascendant with Pluto and the North Node nearby.
Mhm. The
Because
south
it's
node,
in
by
the
the way,
sign of,
be here.
huh?
This is where the south node would be, just for people to know, because we'll be talking about both points.
Right. So the South Node will be technically in his sixth house, but it's in the seven household signs. All right. So I'll be switching back and forth with Placidus and whole sign house. With that Pluto so close to his ascendant and the North Node also nearby, Pluto conjunct the North Node, it can manifest in many different ways. And one of them is that there can be a potential for a lot of riches.
Yeah.
Because Pluto is a financial planet, in essence, conjunct the North Node, it amplifies. It's a magnifying lens. When it's so close to conjunct the ascendant, this life is about enjoying the riches of life. But however, a big however, Pluto conjunct North Node at the same time conjuncting his ascendant in the sign of Scorpio. And Scorpio usually refers to the gestation womb. So it's very much mother related in terms of sign. And with Pluto there can be potential. Well, I guess I'm going to say it. There's going to be a potential of being pimped out by the mother side of the family.
Mm.
That can be one of the what do you call it? Possibilities,
Manifestations.
manifestation. But then North Node, Pluto, and Ascendant together. If I were to see this combination, this basically tells me that there's a need to perhaps give in to the changes that, in this case, his personality needs to go through. But there's also this tendency to obsessively hold on to old ways because Pluto can be holding on to the past kind of energy and defining himself due to a fear of losing the self as a whole. On a very evolutionary kind of way, I will go on to say that when he actually allows himself to let go of identifying with things that no longer serve his evolution, that's when he becomes tremendously empowered. But before that process, there's going to be these experiences that bring about powerlessness before he can feel empowered.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
His shadow, evolutionary, like from an evolutionary point of view, he needs to face his own shadows, his own demons. He comes from a very intense past life. The South Node, as I said to you guys before, it's here at 26 of Taurus, which is conjuncting Algol. And this is a very difficult fixed star, and it's exactly conjunct and in the seventh house whole sign. So this already tells us that this is someone who is extremely, this incarnation is very karmic. There's a lot of generational and karmic issues going on in this lifetime for him. That you can also see that from the Scorpio ascendant and the ascendant at 29 degrees conjunct Pluto. It's everything, and it's all about themes of betrayal, themes of abandonment, themes of abuse, all of this the more obscure side of life. So this is kind of like where he's coming from, and so in that way he needs to. There's a lot of inner work that he needs to do in this lifetime in order to go towards that North Node and achieve that empowerment that Donnie was talking about. But one of those is actually facing his demons, facing the shadow side. But that moon in the 12th house, it's almost like, you know?
Well, put it this way, his moon is conjunct two very
Speaker
positive big
Arcturus.
stars,
Yes.
Arcturus and Spica, and it's in his whole sign 12, but in Placidus it is in his 11th. So he can utilize this in both 11th and 12th house kind of way, be it privately 12th house when he's alone to meditate or pray, because I know he prays quite a lot.
Oh, does he? So he's
Even more even more in recent times actually, because
right.
of
I
what's
never knew
happening
that.
to him.
Okay. I mean, the
He
chart
actually
says
prays
that
a
he's a
lot.
very spiritual person. I wasn't aware that he was
Well,
spiritual.
that's why he was it recently came out with a gospel album.
Oh, okay.
Like he's like, to the church and try to find some kind of salvation and redemption
Yes.
because Moon conjunct Spica or Speaker and Arcturus in his whole sign 12th house can mean he's always seeking this kind of to redeem himself,
Like
like in the eyes
spiritual
of God.
liberation, you know?
And it's also squaring, his Neptune and Uranus in whole sign third house, Placidus second house. So there's this is what he values, and he goes to third house, those places, in this case, like churches. There was a period of time he's very active in the church,
Yeah.
and also singing something, about praising the God and this kind of thing. That really comes from his moon on Spica and Arcturus. And I think it's also this moon on these two very fortunate and spiritual fixed stars that kind of enabled him to survive whatever that he went through.
Yeah, it's like the saving grace, you know?
Yeah. And we are always finding the saving grace in anyone's chart, FYI.
Of course, of course. And these two stars are, like I said before, nothing is inherently bad or good. But these two particular stars, especially Speaker, exactly conjuncting that moon, these are both very spiritual and strong stars, especially Speaker, so it kind of does give him that push, I guess, to keep seeking that spiritual liberation through practices as religion or spirituality. But yeah, I think that if it wasn't for that, his life would be very different today.
So we're talking about this position. And then the ruler of that moon is that Pisces, Venus. So this adds to the mystical quality of that moon.
Yeah. And the artistic part of him, it's very
As well.
close to that. He was
As
born to be an artist.
Yeah, to express himself.
Yeah. Yes.
And okay, this part is a bit of let me just take all this away.
Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, please.
Nah, it's good. And there's also a fixed star on his ascendant, just called Toliman.
Oh, Toliman, yes. Yes.
So take it away.
Yeah, no, that is exactly conjunct his ascendant. And Toliman has the vibration of Jupiter and Venus. It is the centaur. It is related to Chiron. So we are talking about someone obviously on the ascendant, the body being wounded, but also being very capable or able throughout his lifetime to heal others. This is obviously trining all of those planets in the fifth house. So as I think you mentioned before, that he was an advocate for children, or he defends children, a lot. So that could be that part of him that has been wounded as a child, and now he wants to advocate for, children. It's about healing others through one's own pain. And it's actually located, the star is actually located at the foot of the centaur in the constellation. And I was saying to Johnny, before that, I was like, oh, has he had any injuries on his feet? And yeah, true enough, like he's had a few injuries, fractures, and what's it called, and broken ankles, and actual his foot was it as well, playing soccer and skateboarding and all of that. So it has been kind of like a recurring theme throughout his life, where his feet are a little bit weak, which can be shown by that. So I guess, the point of mentioning this, all of the fixed stars that he has, just like we did with P. Diddy, Sean Combs, is that fixed stars can really tell us, how someone's life will play out, especially when they are conjuncting powerful points such as the ascendant, midheaven, descendant, or IC, or the luminaries as well. So in this case, Speaker, Arcturus, and Ptolemy can really talk about his incarnation this lifetime.
Well, and also that he's got Saturn and Sun conjunct in the sign of the feet, Pisces, as well. So this is another point of interest.
Yeah, I did see
And
that. Yeah.
And it's in the third house of movement, Placidus,
Yes.
but it's also in the fourth house, whereby things may be a bit more obscured, and he may not, protect his feet in time, put it that way.
And one of the negative sides, I guess, of this star is that, especially on that ascendant, is that there could be a struggle with feeling whole. There could be a struggle with boundaries. There could be a struggle with internal damage or wounds that have happened throughout his life. So it's almost like at some point, when he starts working on this, then he can start healing other people, if that makes sense. But he has to go through the trials first.
But isn't this kind of paints the picture of he's already having that, shall I say, porous boundary levels?
Yeah.
At the same time, he's being subjected to circumstances represented by that moon square Uranus and Neptune of potentially people who want to profiteer off him, exploit him, manipulate him.
Yes. And in what's it called, in whole sign, as Donnie said before, this is in the 12th moon, in the 12th, Uranus and Neptune in the 3rd, and it's all about this could be movement, as in being sold or being allowed to be taken away by
sacrificed
in a foreign land, or 12th house talks about foreign lands, right? Talks about everything that takes you away from society. And then the 3rd house is about movement. So there's something there that, again, it doesn't necessarily mean this, but in the context of his whole chart, this is an option that we can definitely
because when I see a 12th and 3rd house square, and we've got the planets Moon, Uranus, and Neptune involved, this can be a combination that represents someone who's being sold to a land far away. But because it's the 3rd house, this can be a neighboring country, like Canada and US are just neighbors. So this can be like a 3rd house kind of energy.
And the moon does rule his 9th house as well, in whole sign, of course.
Whole sign, yeah.
It rules Cancer, the 9th house. So we are talking about either, finding success through his art in a foreign land, quite literal, or the darker side of it, which is,
Yes, and the USA's, I think Mercury and Venus, they are in the very early degrees of Cancer as well. So this lands on Justin Bieber's whole sign's 9th of international borders, or 8th house of some kind of financial transaction going on to other people.
Yes.
Unfortunately, but we are just keeping things real. And now
I'm so sorry. I was going to add one more thing that I just noticed. But with that moon square with Uranus, Placidus, Capricorn is in that 2nd house, and with Uranus and Neptune there, especially with Uranus, it can talk about either making money through more criminalistic, sometimes
wayward ways,
deviant
ways,
and because it's involving that moon, that naturally speaking, the planet does speak about the mother or a female figure in his life, then yes, we could talk about a transaction, a bit of a,
right, basically it's human trafficking, right?
Allegedly,
for entertainment purposes only. All opinions expressed are just that.
But it is a possible manifestation if you start, peeling the onion, as I like to say.
Yes, and now let's move into some facets of his chart that's even more uncomfortable to talk about. and we'll be talking about the asteroid of abuse, which is Nessus in his chart. And this is about a few degrees off from his Jupiter retrograde in his Placidus 12, both of them, or in whole signs is in his first of self. And as I've mentioned before, I think in Sean Combs or the Didders podcast, that Nessus, Nessus, represented by 17 degrees 54 minutes of Scorpio, over here, we can use this asteroid to check for patterns of abuse, and we can plot this in. It's part of the Centaurian asteroid. And let me just very briefly go through what I mentioned in our prior podcast regarding cycles of abuse. Because when someone experiences significant abuse in their lifetime, they can respond in one of several ways. They can either surround themselves with individuals who treat them like their abusers or abuser did. On the other hand, they may also treat themselves like how the abuser treated them. They become the perpetrator subsequently. Or they treat others like their abuser they treat others like their abuser treated them. So it can be one of several ways that it can manifest. And going back to what the asteroid Nessus can be talking about, first and foremost, it can talk about sexual or emotional abuse. It can also describe the great power or the great need for responsibility and integrity on the other hand. You also can talk about facets of obsession. And there's this awareness of risk that's involved, very much encapsulated in Scorpio as well. On the positive side, the asteroid Nessus in its highest or higher vibrational realm can talk about generosity, benevolence, being compassionate, willing to lend a helping hand, being cooperative, being respectful of boundaries, being aware of power of life, force, energy. And it also involves the healthy use of sexual energy. But on the negative or lower vibrational end, when we talk about Nessus, it's about something that's possessive, vengeful, manipulative, resorting to negative alchemy for personal gain. And it's also talking about the negative use of sexual energy.
Yes. And on the, as you said before, the bright side, the good side of it is the healing power of this, right? The need to grow and heal. And, you know, as you guys can tell, like there's so many positions, there's so many fixed stars, there's so many, you know, this asteroid in particular in his chart that talks about, you know, healing. I think he would be a very powerful healer if he decided to go down a spiritual, you know, way. He would extremely powerful healer. He has that within him. But at the same time, there's, you know, the other face of the coin, which is very, very obscure, and especially when it conjuncts a planet like Jupiter, because Jupiter, in a very basic way, expands, right? So it makes everything bigger and better. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't discriminate. And Jupiter rules the 5th house of sex, amongst other things. It rules the 2nd house of money, you know, so just by that, you can start putting things together. And, you know, and the 1st house, of course, being in the 1st house of the body, of the self.
And I will go on and say that because it's in his whole sign 1st house, that Nessus and Jupiter conjunction, it can manifest, I would say, broadly in 2 ways, at least in his life, because Jupiter can represent a mentor, counselor, advisor figure. In this case, this may describe Diddy, and also Usher, who are like Jupiterian roles to him. They pluck him out of obscurity into, you know, stardom. So there's that Jupiterian energy to be that benefic hand of his. At the same time, I'm not even surprised that in a past lifetime that he may have studied a lot of sacred texts as well. And that's actually coming from piggybacking what Cam has said earlier about Jupiter ruling the whole sign fifth house in the sign of Pisces. And the fifth house is actually 8 divisional houses away from the 10th.
Yes.
So there's this kind of, that person may have done something that's 8 divisional houses related, which may be occult, metaphysical, or shamanic in nature, as a career, or something that they've known for, which is the 10th house where the derivative houses start from.
Yeah.
And this is in his whole sign first house, so it's the self.
Yes.
So there's something pertaining to that he knows how to manipulate energy, be it consciously, or in this case, if we switch back to Placidus, subconsciously, 12th house.
Yeah.
Something of that nature. But Nessus really described the cycles of abuse, well, at least for him in this lifetime, as we're looking at this chart. And Jupiter and Nessus, they are aspecting Vesta and his part of fortune. So it's like a double-edged sword, because when we talk about part of fortune, it's your pot of gold. But then Aries and Scorpio, they are 6 houses apart. So this is what we call in astrology the aspect of inconjunct or quincunx. It can be a blind spot. With Vesta tied into the picture, Vesta basically represents a place or a location of sorts. It's the spiritual fire. It's also the asteroid that I look for if I want to look at endings and beginnings of sorts. Both are in the sign of Aries, which represent new beginnings.
Yeah.
It's the first sign of the zodiac. It's the baby of the zodiac. And both are ruled by Mars.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because the part of fortune, I guess from a traditional point of view, it talks about the fluctuations of life, right? The changes in life, but it also talks about the health, the body, the issues, and it is in the 6th house.
All signs, yeah.
6th house. So Jupiter conjunct Nessus in conjunct this, and in conjunction is it's an annoying aspect, it's a so there's tension there between these two. And again, Jupiter rules the 5th house and rules the 5th house, sex, money, children. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to say it, because it's all allegedly, and it's a very dark interpretation of it, but it is a possibility.
And if you think about the sign of Aries being represented by his whole sign 6th house, the 6th house in itself is more traditional, meaning is to become someone's slave.
Yeah.
Someone's servant, someone that's beneath you, someone that's a hired help employee of sorts.
And as you said before, and it's ruled by Mars, right?
Which is a phallic planet, Mars.
Yeah.
So going to be dick around, basically. Yeah. In ways. The literal interpretation, which I hate to say it, but I have to, because it's so literal here, that Jupiter and Nessus in his whole sign first house, in conjunct that part of fortune, and Vesta in his whole sign 6 of slavery and higher help and all those, both ruled by Mars, which is right beside Mercury, but it also forms a wider conjunction with Saturn. Let me just link this up and delineate each and every single part. Cycles of abuse may occur with a mentor-like figure. And by the way, Sean Combs, or should I say Diddy's son, is close by these degrees.
Yes, at 22, I think, or 20.
Very close by, yeah. And these two placements, Nessus and Jupiter, so a mentor-like figure is going to introduce him to cycles of abuse. Okay, simple as that.
That is very karmic, and in a way, it had to happen,
And both are in conjunct Vesta and part of fortune in his whole sign house 6 in Aries. So it's to become a sex slave.
Yeah.
the most like simplistic way
Simple, yeah.
looking at things. And so the ruler of placements in Aries is that Mars, which is right beside Mercury. So this happened when he is mercurial as a child.
Yeah. Yes.
In the sign of Aquarius, being a child in a certain industry, a child star in the industry, this can be a very Aquarian in nature. And Mars, which rules over Vesta and part of fortune in Aries, in whose sign house 6, is also widely conjuncting Saturn, someone who's older. In the sign of Pisces in the music industry.
The entertainment business. I was just about to say that, yes.
So you can see how everything is so literal. Sometimes I just laugh when I just kind of see things like manifest in such a literal way.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you know that Mercury, the whole sign, also rules the 8th house, and the 8th house is well known to be about crisis, about abuse as well, trauma.
Merging the body with another, the most simplistic way.
Yes. Intimacy, and psychological of issues. So all of this, Mars, the dispositor, is Saturn in that 5th house, and Mars is applying to Saturn. Saturn is the malefic, contrary to the sect. So we are talking about a very difficult planet for him. Hence why now, during his Saturn return, he's having such a bad time.
Yes, and just to give the audience like a very quick background. So a night chart, the biggest Benefic will be Venus.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest Malefic will be Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's why she said what she said.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, because Justin Bieber's born at night. So
Yes.
the sun is below the ascendant and descendant line. Okay, this is how we classify things. And now let's move to also something that's a little bit uncomfortable to talk about, but is part of his story. And is that Lucifer, that is at 3 degrees of Aries for him. And this is also forming an inconjunct or quincunx or 150-degree aspect with that Juno. So my question to you, Cam, is that do you see from the placements that I just pointed arrows to, that are there some kind of Luciferian stuff going on in his background?
Yeah. Dark, very dark energies. We can talk about literal rituals. We can talk about selling of the soul. We can talk about witchcraft, black magic. We can talk about all of these things. Also, you can see that by the South Node conjunct Algol in his 7th house. Because the 7th house is not just partners. It's not just your wife or your husband. It's also, number one, your enemies, traditionally speaking. And it talks about contracts. So could it be a contract like the selling of the soul? Like you have to sign a contract for that, right? So I know we're getting a little bit dark here, but bear with us because it is, again, a possible manifestation of these energies.
Yeah. And if we go slightly into his natal chart and use this as the base chart for what happened back in January 2023, because that's when he actually sold off his masters for like a record, like what, 300 million or more?
Mm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And what's really interesting is that January 2023, he would be age 28 chronologically.
So 5th house.
So 5th house.
I see. Whole sign.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So is everything pointing to everything in Pisces over here, including his IC, where it's located. So the Sun, Saturn, IC, Venus, which is his biggest Benefic, and also Pallas, Athenas, are all activated in Pisces. At the time of the month in 2023, which is January, that he sold off his masters for record amount. And because Venus is also included here, that's his biggest Benefic. That's because his night chart holder, that it blessed him with all the money in the world.
Yes.
And Saturn here basically tells me about the culmination of his work till then in 2023.
Yes. He did this in January, you said?
Yeah, January 2023.
Early, yeah. Yeah, so see, because he has the Benefic and the Malefic of the sect, in the same house and sign, the periods where Pisces is active, whether it's through zodiacal releasing or Fidaria, or even something like this, like you're pointing out, it could play both ways. Sometimes you get a bit of both. You get the positive side, which in this case is, a lot of money, right? He got a lot of money, good payout. But on the other side, correct me if I'm wrong, but Saturn went into Pisces in March 2023.
It's actually still in late Aquarius at 23 of
Yeah.
Aquarius on his Mercury.
Yeah. But then in March, it moved into Pisces. So that's when, like, you can see maybe the consequences of doing this, or a bad thing happening apart from the good thing. Do you know what I mean? Like this, because normally you will see both. You'll see something good, but also something bad. That's normally what happens when the Benefic and the Malefic are in the same house and sign.
He basically gotten his first Saturn return in late March, early April of 2023.
Yeah. Okay.
Shortly after. Yeah.
And for him, for a night chart, Saturn return can be a little bit more challenging than for people born during the day. Simply because, as we have said, Saturn is the Malefic of the sect. So his whole Saturn return, which is not just a couple of months, it lasts 2.5 years. So he's still going through it. So all of this period, starting March 2023 up until now, we have seen so many things happen. So he sold his records, right? He got all this money, good times, all beautiful, great. In January 2023, comes March, starts his Saturn return, which is in the same sign, and everything gradually starts going a little bit downhill for him, because not long ago, September 2024, Diddy went down, and everything started to come out. Things that were already kind of, people were already speculating, because this is not something that we just heard in September. This is something that we've been hearing for a while. But in September onwards is when things really picked up, and he's still going through that Saturn return.
Yeah. And it's very interesting though, because I'm about to show the audience his Saturn return plotted against his natal.
Yeah.
And we are going to look it from the viewpoint of a synastry comparison, so people can see both sides of the coin, the story.
Yes.
So he did go through his Saturn return in about 10, 11 months, starting from March to April of 2023. And I'm only plotting the very last Saturn return, when it passes through the last time across his natal Saturn on 6th of January of 2024, this year. And the inner wheel on the left represents his Saturn return, and he's got an Aquarius rising, which is also a Saturn root sign.
By Saturn, yeah.
And looking at whatever I'm seeing, Venus is high up in the sky, conjuncting the midheaven. That's the closest point in Sagittarius, which is ruled by the Jupiter, the planet that usually governs like mentor, advisors, and counselor kind of figure role in his life. And that Jupiter is in Taurus, in his second house. This is actually very close to one of Sean Combs or Diddy's placements.
Wait, what does he have in Taurus? Remind me.
He's got that Saturn
Yes.
Mercury opposition, and I think
Yes,
his Saturn is conjunct Lucifer around those degrees of early Taurus degrees. So you can see how it's intertwined, and it's happening in Justin's second house in his Saturn chart. So there's some kind of karmic payback of sorts when we talk about second house, or should I say second and eighth house axis. And his self-esteem may get pretty wrecked because of that Saturn returns Chiron conjunct North Node also in his second. That's ruled by Mars. And Mars is in right at the beginning of Capricorn. And by the way, this Mars is conjunct his Sun-Moon midpoint.
Yes. His natal sun and moon midpoint. Yeah.
Sun-Moon midpoint, we can see here on the right side on the inner wheel, which represents his natal. His Sun-Moon midpoint is at 2 degrees 31 minutes of Capricorn. And that is conjunct by that Saturn return Mars. So there can be this attack towards who he is.
Yeah. Yes.
And this may drain him of his second house energies in the Saturn return, which means like, can he hold on to what he has in terms of self-esteem and worth? Second house can mean that, but it also can mean money as well.
And I think one of the, I guess, trying to see the positive side of this in a way could be there's a beautiful mutual reception between Jupiter and Venus, right? And Venus is on an angle right up the top there. So these two factors can mitigate a little bit, I guess. A little bit.
But there's a big but because of the correlation of Diddy's or Sean Combs' Saturn and Lucifer on this Jupiter over here in mutual reception to that Venus, which is angular conjunct the 10, it means that things are going to get flushed out into the public via the legal system, Sagittarius.
But do you think that maybe when you said before, kind of like repaying a karmic debt, it's almost like what I got from that and then seeing this, it's almost like he will be repaying a karmic debt and therefore he can then eventually move on from it, spiritually speaking. So there could be a hidden, perhaps, blessing, which could be hiddenly, manifested by that Jupiter and Venus in a mutual reception and Venus in that midheaven, next to that midheaven. It could be like the completion of a karmic cycle with this guy once this is all over. Does that make sense?
Well, I think I can see it from that Pluto in his Saturn return 12th house of
at 29, yeah.
At 29 in sextile to his natal, North Node, Pluto, and Ascendant falling into the Saturn return 10th house. So there's 10th house and 12th house kind of correlation. What this tells me is that he's at the important conjuncture of feeling at his lowest, that powerlessness, in order to be on the ascension to being empowered.
Yes.
So there's this kind of falling into the pits and then going up.
Yeah. So it's like what we said at the beginning, right? Like facing his shadows, dealing with his own wounds first, and then going up onto that healing journey. This is, of course, evolutionary speaking. But yeah, I think that's how I kind of like interpreted that Jupiter and Venus, but also on a more, I guess, mundane or basic, way. It could be the fact that he does have, in a way, the support of the public. Everyone is coming to his defense. Everyone is supportive of Justin Bieber right now, and ever since everything started to come out. So that could, in a way, mitigate. Again, it doesn't fix it. It doesn't cancel everything else, but it mitigates a little bit how this might affect him, if that makes sense.
Right. He's probably feeling really like spiraling downwards, and that's coming from his Saturn return, Saturn being in the first house.
And with that square to the moon,
With that square to the moon. And
yeah.
And also that Neptune is there as well. That escapism.
Mm-hmm.
So he may be using some kind of substances.
Yeah.
On a more positive level, Neptune is to pray, is to go into meditation, meditative mode.
Hermit mode, isolation, meditation, going within, just going inwards for a
And
while.
he got to commit to that practice on a regular level because Neptune is opposing Juno. You got to be committed
Yeah.
to it
And it's
and
like
actively.
emotional resilience, maybe, in a way, or finding that emotional resilience. Before I said a square, but it's a trine. I'm so sorry. That's the moon with a square to Saturn. I said square again. The trine with the moon and Saturn, he could be developing, or this will force him to develop some sort of emotional resilience in order to get out of this. But this will happen while in isolation. While, like, I
Right.
don't think he's going to come out and speak about this, for example. I doubt that he will start giving interviews, or you know what I mean. I don't see that happening, at least.
Well, because the Saturn return ascendant is falling to his natal third house of giving interviews.
But it's it's in Pisces, so it's,
Well, technically still in Aquarius.
well,
Yeah. Well, whole sign will
all sign, yeah,
whole sign is fourth. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So there's already this. I don't think he'll do it because when we talk about Aquarius, it's also the people that's handling him. So maybe his handlers are actually stopping him. He's got to cope with this by himself.
yeah,
And the midhaven of the Saturn return is falling to his natal first house of like announcing stuff, Sagittarius. Will he do that? I don't think so. So because of this, he may feel kind of like being stuck,
mm,
between a rock and a mountain.
yeah,
That's this kind of vibe that I got. So this is something to take note of. And since we're looking at this, why not we look at his natal, progressed, and solar arc directed charts. So let me just get my charts out. Is this the one we are looking at? Okay. So I've basically set the progressions and solar arc directed charts to middle of April 2025. And why do I set these two derivative charts for around that time? And that's because around that time, there's a triple conjunction in the sky of Venus, Saturn, and Mercury in the late degrees of Pisces. That will be in his natal fourth house, transiting there. And all these three placements will be trine transit Cancer in his eighth house. All these three placements will be trining Mars in late Cancer. So is in his fourth and eighth house. This can represent already a potentially troubling time
100%, yeah,
for him, because fourth and eighth house transits, when they're trining each other, this can bring a lot of emotionality
yeah,
and stuff. And we just had some eclipses. I think there's one
yeah,
at 25 degrees 14 minutes of Pisces. From what I can see here, his progress ascendant captured on the middle wheel is around 22 degrees of Sagittarius. So that eclipse back in the third week of September 2024
that's right.
is really squaring his progress ascendant. Is giving me some kind of spiral downwards kind of energy. It's not exactly him feeling very good about himself. Perhaps there's this paranoia of what may come out.
Yeah,
And this eclipse is happening in his natal fourth house of like deep, deep memories that you don't want to talk about.
yeah,
Talk about it.
definitely. And the progression chart is it's not a, I guess, material chart, as in like it's more psychological, it's more internal. So this speaks very loudly to his internal
Landscape. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Especially with that moon very close to that ascendant that eventually will make that exact conjunction, which will be about what did we July, I think it was.
Mm.
So I think, as Donnie said, April, May, June, July, August, these are big months for him. A lot's happening. If you guys can see as well in the solar arc, we have
Outermost chart. Yeah.
his ascendant, solar arc ascendant changing signs. Now this is huge for anyone. And it's changing signs to a Saturn ruled sign, which is the malefic of his sect. This is not a friendly planet to him. And then you can see Pluto, of course, following behind at 29. Sagittarius still, but again at that 29 crisis degree, right? So it's almost like from April onwards,
For about approximately 1 year and a bit more. Yeah.
yeah. And Saturn, of course, not getting ahead of ourselves or saying anything, but Saturn does rule death. It does rule,
End of life. Yeah.
uh-huh. So it's
The finiteness of life.
it's a possibility, or the end of a part of his life, a very important part of his life, if you want to give it a little bit of a twist, so it's not so, fatal.
Morbid.
But there's definitely, and you can see Venus in the progress chart also at 29 degrees. Again, this is very karmic. This is a karmic cycle coming to an end for him, but it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in a subtle way, put it that way. So it's just going to be, I think 2025 for him specifically is going to be a very transformative year, and transformation can mean both, death, right, from the material to the spiritual world, or transforming a current situation and then coming on the other side. It could go both ways.
Well, but because in the progression chart, Venus does rule the progress midhaven. And the midhaven, one of the meanings can be joining the God.
Yeah.
That means leaving your physical body in order to merge with God. That can be one of the meanings of the 10th house or the midhaven.
On the other hand, as well, sorry to interrupt you, the midheaven could also speak about his status. He could get a divorce. He could separate.
Venus is marriage.
Yeah. And it
Libra.
It rules his 7th house natally, so that could also be an option.
And talk about eclipse activations across his 3 charts. So for the very first one, in 2025, I think it's in the middle of March, we do have a total lunar eclipse at 23 Virgo.
Yes.
So this is again squaring his progress ascendant.
When did you say, sorry?
The middle of March 2025 is at 23 degrees of Virgo. So this will happen in his natal 10th house of, public image and all those stuff. But it's also squaring his progress ascendant. Anything ascendant related is towards his body. But in the progression chart, this can be emotional body because the moon is close by. Both are in the sign of Sagittarius, the sign of legal proceedings and stuff. So something may come out in court.
Yeah.
In March pertaining to, his involvement in the whole scheme of things. And not to forget that the sign of Sagittarius can rule something that's media related.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Because if I hear it properly from, whatever I gather regarding him, there's already tapes with him, allegedly, being underage, involved in some stuff, while he's within that circle with Diddy.
Yeah. And that eclipse will also, because it's at 23 degrees, so it'll be around here. So you can see that it will oppose his Venus very closely.
And also Pallas Athenas, much closer.
And Venus rules his 7th house of partnerships. open enemies, and contracts. But also is the dispositor of that moon in Libra in the 12th house. One of the 12th house themes is ending, losses, right? So that's why there could be the loss of his marriage, for example, the loss of a contract. Do you know what I mean? Like there's something there where, and it's a total lunar eclipse, things coming to light, culmination, the ending of something, the ending
You
of,
can't run from it.
no. So there is something there related to these themes as well for him next year. And of course, you know, nothing probably will happen on the day of the eclipse, but pay attention to what happens, you know, a month before it, and then gradually as the months go by, what starts happening.
Well, and also Venus does rule his south node in the 6th house on Algol.
Yeah.
This may make him lose his head by being someone's hired help, slave in that role in another person's life.
He could he could on a you know very positive outcome, he could just check himself into rehab, for example, or going, you know, into a hospital of some sort or a retreat of some sort and just spending time away, because he might lose his head, or he might, you know, start having emotional and psychological triggers.
And not to forget that, okay, I gotta change color so as not to clash with yours.
No, that's okay.
The solar arc Mercury at 24 Pisces.
Yeah.
Mercury can rule communications, but it also can rule some kind of film, Pisces media. Mercury in Pisces. And Mercury is not in very good dignity. And this will be total lunar eclipsed.
Yeah. And
so the sun will be here, the moon will be here.
Yeah,
in the
and it's his midheaven, you know, is the ruler of his midheaven. So again, his status, right? Married, divorce, separation, widowed, you know, or his career as well, his public image. And also rules this is of course whole sign, his 8th house whole sign, which is the house of crisis. Also other people's money, you know, financials.
And whole sign 11 of group activities, like an organization, a ring of sorts.
Yeah.
His involvement in the larger group.
Yeah. And this has to do with his art as well, because it's in the 5th house, right? Amongst other things, whole sign. And
well, the 5th house is also party.
Yes, 100%. It's sex as well. And the 5th house also is a money house. So it does talk about him as in like a brand, you know, his business. So what he is, obviously he's a person, but he's also a brand. So
a branding.
Yeah, there is something there that is being eclipsed, that is coming to an end or coming to light, that might cause him to lose something, whether it's his head, his marriage, his, you know.
Well, the whole sign 5th, 8th, and 11th are all tied into the picture. So 5th and 11 is something to tie to his fans and popularity as an artist.
His fame, yeah.
8th house is the reversal of fortunes as well.
It is.
So something pertaining to that, and that will be like in March itself, but we may feel the total lunar plus minus a few weeks each way. And on the 29th of March 2025, we have our last eclipse along the Aries Libra axis at about 9 degrees of Aries. Look at where his progress sun is and solar arc sun.
7 fairies, yeah.
Let me just change the color. So solar arc sun here. Progress sun. Pretty close to the eclipse point at 9 degrees of Aries.
Yes.
And also his natal part of, not natal, but sorry, progress part of fortune at 14. Still close, a bit far, but.
Yes. So yeah, I think that there is I think this next year is going to be huge for him. There might be a lot of things, new information coming out that will cause him to go at the very least into a deep
It's even more like withdrawn. Yeah.
yeah, just
And then natally, his sun is ruling his whole sign 10th house in Leo.
yeah.
So again, public image. And you'll be spread across the news because Placidus is the ninth house, is along the axis of communication. And you'll be on the papers and blogs and, my God, all over YouTube channels.
Yeah.
Something of that sort. Content creators, Leo. We'll be talking about this a lot.
Yes.
And moving on to the next eclipse portal. This one is even more telling. The next total lunar eclipse will be happening right here in his 4th and 10th. There's a total lunar eclipse happening in the middle of Pisces, so the sun will be here, and then the moon will be here. It's a total lunar eclipse.
When is that one?
7th to 8th of September,
Uh-huh.
2025.
Yeah.
So you can see the eclipses are all hitting him pretty hard. That's the thing.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
And it's across all 3 charts: natal, progress, solar arc.
Yeah. What will Jupiter be doing by then? Jupiter will be in Cancer. Is that
Jupiter will
correct?
be in Cancer, yes.
Okay. That
Yeah.
would be good.
So there can be like a bolstering effect,
Yeah.
hopefully. But then when you have a total lunar eclipse happening along one of your angles close to exact, some shit's about to go down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is still pretty close to squaring his solar arc Jupiter. So even more stuff coming up or coming out. Yeah.
And this is Placidus, but it is, as Donnie said, a total eclipse. And in the 4th house Placidus, the 4th house, traditionally speaking, does talk about death. So
Right.
when at least when I see death in a chart, I not only see the 8th and the 12th, which of course, but the 4th house normally, or the 4th house ruler, or eclipse in the 4th house, or on the angles, it can actually talk about the end of life, and also the legacy that you leave behind.
And also it's squaring Jupiter, and Jupiter can represent children.
Yeah.
Or it can be like a mentor or an advisor figure to you. But Jupiter, in the simplest way of things, it talks about the justice system, the legal system.
Yeah.
So there's even more stuff being like flushed out because it's in Sagittarius. It's like flushed out for all to see.
And then eventually, Jupiter will be in Cancer, whole sign 9th house, which is the legal system.
Via transit, yeah.
Via transit, sorry, yes.
Yeah. This one is a solar arc directed Jupiter. So this can bring about some kind of liberation.
Mm-hmm.
But liberation can be of many kinds, okay? And moving on to the very last eclipse of the year, which will be at 29 degrees of Virgo. So this will be impacting also his natal and predictive charts heavily. First of all is that solar arc, Pluto and ascendant. It will be squaring these 2 placements. At the same time, it'll be trining his natal, ascendant, Pluto, and North Node. Sorry, sextiling. Sextile is there. Sextile aspects, and here will be squaring. What else have I observed? Yeah, of course, his Venus.
The Venus there, that's going to be difficult. That's, in a good way. The reason why I originally thought that this could all talk about, the ending of a karmic cycle, that yes, the process would be horrible, but then, coming out of that is him being released from this karmic cycles that he has, because Venus will go into domicile in Taurus.
Via
So
progression, yes.
From Aries, it's going to uplift for a long time, in that sign of Taurus. So this could, this is of course not on the day, but gradually speaking, it's like there could be some sort of liberation of the soul, or a karmic contract, that Venus being the dispositor of that south node in the 7th house natal. So it could be something like that as well. But this is internal, right? It's a progressed chart. So it's him.
But then the solar arc, which is more external in nature, it does square that solar arc, Pluto, and ascendant.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a gnarly
It's not going to be
period.
a nice process, no.
Oh, no, not at all.
No.
And so this is what we have on the predictive side based on Justin Bieber's chart alone. But I do have like 2 last chart that I want to share with the audience. And this will be the Composite and Davison chart. If I were to
Diddy.
put Justin Bieber and Sean Combs' chart together. And by the way, just as a very brief thing, we've also generated his solar return, set for his birth location, and compare it with his natal chart. This is more or less like reiteration of what we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a out of bound, Mars in Cancer conjunct his ascendant. That's really not very good in terms of handling emotional turmoil. It's going to be all over the place. And he will be experiencing a solar return new moon. The sun and moon are very close together. And the moon is conjunct Saturn.
And his Venus, solar return Venus, is conjunct natal Saturn as well. And his solar return Venus will be in a square to solar return Mars. So this is not great for his
emotional stability and psychological stability. Yeah.
And on a more external level, his relationship with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Mars and Venus, not always, but a lot of the times, can speak of betrayals, right? Can speak of cheating, 100, just in a very simple way. We have the 2 planets, relational planets, in Venus in detriment in Aries, Mars in fall in Cancer. So this is, and then Venus is also conjuncting the what's it called, the Saturn. So it's the solar return Saturn and Moon. So this is this is not, I don't see this as something great for his relationship or his internal world.
And if we were to base his solar return via his birth location, there's all this placements here. Midhaven, Mercury is the closest to the midhaven, with North Node and Neptune. It's not very good for someone who wants to think logically and face life realistically, isn't it?
No.
All these are trining his part of fortune in his first house, so he may take this all in and find it too hard to process certain stuff.
And then we have, just to, as like the cherry on top of the cake, we have his natal, the conjunction of Uranus and Neptune in the 7th house, whole sign, and in an opposition to Mars, and squaring that solar return Venus. So this, of course, is not exactly by degree, but it's very close. So yeah. That's why
What,
I don't think. Oh, I can't delete that. Sorry. Yeah, I don't think this is.
well, in the solar return, there's already a Pluto and Pallas Athena's in his seventh house of marriage,
Yeah,
in
Placidus.
the sign of divorce, Aquarius, or separation at least.
And Uranus is the planet of divorce as well, it rules divorces. Neptune, confusion, betrayals as well, going behind someone's back. So it's I don't know, there could be an issue of something like that, simple as that, or something a little bit more deeper where maybe he will struggle emotionally a lot, and maybe that will be the cause of the relationship maybe coming to an end, or at the very least going through a very rough period.
I have also briefly looked at, because there isn't like a place via Wikipedia where he's predominantly staying in, but I just found out that he's staying, well, most of his time in Beverly Park in California. If I were to generate his solar return according to that locality, he will have a Gemini rising.
Oh, okay.
Gemini rising, but the ruler is again that Mercury conjunct North Node and Neptune is like, it's not helping either.
And the Gemini ascendant would be his whole sign eighth house, and when the eighth house comes onto the ascendant of a solar return, normally, especially if Mercury is a little bit battered, it can show
Yeah.
a rough year ahead. Not
Yeah.
always this. Don't get scared if you have that, but it depends on the whole context. But in this context, it can be different.
Yes. So what Cam was saying is that using whole sign, this Mercury, should I say like Gemini rising, will be bringing
The eighth house natal.
his solar return ascendant into his whole sign natal eighth house. Yeah. So there'll be a lot of changes because it's Gemini. A lot of news, Gemini.
But
A lot of gossip,
crisis,
Gemini.
a lot of crisis as well,
Yeah,
Just of news or information.
and eighth house Gemini can be a lot of decisions will need to be made because Gemini is that decision-making sign as well. Okay, so the last two things before we wrap it up. I have gone on to plot the composite chart of Diddy with Justin Bieber, and this is what we have. So this chart basically describes the relationship between these two individuals. So this is the third entity, the relationship itself between two of them.
It's what they create in a way.
What they create. And right off the bat, the object A2 is the asteroid Nessus I've plotted in. So this, again, like what I said before, it talks about cycles of abuse and the abusive component within their relationship as an entity. And it's located at close to 2 degrees of Virgo. Basically, what a composite chart is using the midpoints and to plot them accordingly. We will have transit. Pluto is already in Aquarius, so it's forming what we call an inconjunct or quincunx to this point. Saturn and Neptune via transit will be also forming an inconjunct to this point. So what we have is a yacht or finger of God with this as the tip of the finger of God. Something is destined, or some destined ship is to blow up, so to speak. Transit Uranus will go into Gemini from 7th of July onwards next year, and this will be forming a square. So something scandalous is about to explode regarding Nessus-related themes that I mentioned earlier. Not to forget, their composite moon is at 29 of Virgo, that exact eclipse point happening on 21st to 22nd of September of next year.
And I don't know if
And
you
what
guys remember, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, I'm so sorry, but it's interesting, for people to try and go back to the P. Diddy video. He had the 29th degree on his chart was as prominent as it is in Justin Bieber's chart. And Composite, of course, their moon is at 29 degrees. The ascendant, 29 degrees of Libra. So we are talking about a very karmic, intense, powerful karmic connection between these two individuals.
and it's a crisis field as well.
Extremely.
29, and this is about to be eclipsed in September of 2025, close to exact, by the way. And their composite moon rules whole sign house 10th or Placidus 9th. So 9th again is about something legal, something whole sign house 10 talks about everyone will know about it. You can't hide from the public.
Yeah.
It's going to be
you'll know through the lawyers, right?
through the lawyers.
Yeah, like a press conference, and then the lawyers talk about it, for example, which is something that does happen nowadays.
And then what I like about this chart is that it actually tells you the zodiacal positioning below. So it's not only that composite moon that will be hit. We've got also composite Pluto, ascendant, Mercury. Mercury is the news. The moon, of course. And then when transit Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto enter into the early degrees of the masculine signs, Uranus will be activated in their composite chart over here.
Yeah.
Escandalo.
Escandalo. 0 degrees as well, another critical degree. So yeah, these two have unfinished business, to say the least.
And Uranus co-rule their Placidus composite IC. So some things will end and some things will begin.
Yeah.
But Mars is also there, so something phallic, sexual is going to come out
behind
pertaining to that. And Jupiter as well, but it's only for a brief while in 2025. So Jupiter is around here in their composite first house.
Yeah.
In a sign of Scorpio, something that's entangled together, something sexual as well.
Something sexual, yeah, of course.
Intense.
Secret.
Crisis filled. So we already can see the composite chart reveal some stuff, but my preference actually, when we look at someone's relationship, is to plot their Davison chart. There's a difference between composite and Davison, how it's actually generated. Composite is basically taking the mathematical midpoint and just to form this chart, because in P. Diddy's video, our alleged ascendant is at 29 Virgo, and Justin Bieber has his ascendant at 29 Scorpio. And that's why taking the average, we've got 29 Libra.
And they both have Pluto conjunct ascendant. So this chart, of course, you'll have Pluto as well nearby.
And moving on to the Davison chart, is generated slightly differently in terms of its method. So we take the birth data of Justin Bieber and also Sean Combs, and we basically find the average or the midpoint in terms of date in the ephemeris, and also in terms of their locality. We take the average of these two things. So in other words, the Davison chart, literally you can find it within an ephemeris. So this is a valid chart. You can see there's a date here, 1st of Jan 1982. At this time, and is in this midpoint in space. What's even more interesting with this chart, because this is a living chart that's found in the ephemeris, we can even put more predictive methods to this chart for analysis. But what really caught me off guard is again their moon.
Yeah, 23 of Pisces.
23 of Pisces. It was actually eclipsed back in September in 2024 with that partial lunar eclipse at 25 degrees 40 minutes of Pisces. But in the middle of March 2025, this will again be eclipse. This one even more exact to the degree via opposition. So the sun will be here, the moon will be here, forming that total lunar eclipse. And the moon, if I were to use Placidus, that is ruling their third house of news and information about their relationship. The moon being located in the 11th house, that means the airwaves, the mass media, the internet in general. So news about that will be flooding with the internet, or via the internet. Things will be even more news will come out.
Yeah.
And not to forget that the same total lunar eclipse happening in the middle of March 2025 will be also forming sextile to their Davison, Mercury, and South Node, whatever shit that they've done together in the past. South Node. It's going to be flushed out. And it's in the 3rd and 9th house axis, Placidus. So communication axis again. Also, I know there's no escaping, isn't it? And not to forget that their Davison ascendant is pretty close to conjunct fixed star Algol. And transit Uranus will be passing over this position 3 times. First of the 3 will be happening exact middle of June next year. After that is 3rd of December next year. And then the last pass across their Davison ascendant will be on 5th of April 2026, if they survive, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
So a lot. Notice that the rising sign are both Venus roots.
Yes. And they both have Venus very well placed in their charts, meaning, by dignity. Venus, Justin Bieber's chart is in the 5th house. She loves the 5th house and it's exalted in
Pisces.
Thank you. And in P. Diddy, Libra, in domicile. So they're both
Conjunct Jupiter.
Yeah, in the 2nd house. So they both have very, very strong Venuses in their chart. But here Venus is in a Saturn ruled chart, ruled sign. It's in Aquarius. So that already can tell you a little bit about what to expect of the relationship, if that makes sense.
And Venus is all about the arts and music, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Possibly create some artistic magic.
And in P. Diddy's chart, he has the conjunction. Bieber has the trine, and with Jupiter, Venus, Jupiter. But here they have the square. Jupiter is in Scorpio, so it's almost like they come together, but instead of creating something great, they both go downhill. Does that make sense?
Eventually. Yeah. They did have all the riches being thrown at them because of that Scorpio.
Yeah.
Jupiter in their Davison chart, but does it actually mitigate the rest of the stuff that we see?
Yeah.
As well. And not to forget that the Davison, Pluto, and Vertex are actually conjunct.
Yeah, the Vertex.
So very much entangled is a karmic bond. Vertex is like 100%. The karmic descendant. Yeah.
It's extremely karmic. These 2 people, unfortunately, were, meant to meet up in this lifetime and go through this. Yeah.
And this Davison, Pluto, and Vertex will be transited by Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus throughout 2025 into 2026.
Yeah.
And Pluto here rules their Davison descendant of 7th house. So there's a lot of things to confront, and it's very scorpionic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And at least at least Bieber, just to close. Sorry, but he has, that fourth whole sign house in Aquarius, fifth in Pisces. The eclipses right now are hitting his Sun, Venus, Saturn, and his midheaven. But then the next eclipses will be in Aquarius and Leo, which means that they will start hitting that fourth house, that Mars and that Mercury. The Mars is the ruler of his ascendant. So it's he has a few years ahead where it's just going to be extremely tumultuous. A lot of changes, a lot of, it's gonna be hard for him. That's
In 2026, there'll be the first. Let me just look at it briefly. There'll be this eclipse at 28 degrees of Aquarius.
yes, the 17th of Feb. Yeah.
This will be exactly squaring his natal, ascendant, descendant, and Pluto and his nodal axis all in one.
Yeah. Yeah. So
my prayers really to Justin Bieber, because I think he's going to go through this. If he can survive this, his potentials are limitless, I would say. It's like this metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly kind of.
If he survives this, he can reach that Phoenix point of evolution of Scorpio, he can definitely reach that 100%, but he needs to survive this really, hard time that he has ahead. So,
and I don't think it will end for him until like much later, until like close to the end of this decade. Yeah.
He has a few years ahead of him.
Yeah. Until the eclipses along Aquarius and Leo kind of phases out.
Yeah.
Then he'll probably catch kind of like a breather.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what we have for you guys in terms of Justin Bieber, having this kind of dissection of his chart, past, present, and future.
Yes. So thank you so much if you stayed. I always say that because we always somehow end up talking. I'm so sorry for so long. But it's there's so much we could say, and it's so interesting. So I really, if you stayed this far, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And I hope you guys learned, which is, one of the main things of these videos is that you learned with us. So
yes, and if you want us to look further into other people's chart, hopefully the person has an established birth time, so we don't have to rectify. It will save us a lot of time, like in this case for Justin Bieber, because there's an established good rating birth time. So that helped a lot in terms of, spearheading a lot of things forward. So till next time then, shall we?
so much.
All right, bye.
Bye.